Hey, everybody. It is Thursday, March 20th. You're listening to the Mo News Podcast. I'm Mo Shwanunu.
And I'm Jill Wagner. This is the place where we bring you just the facts.
And we read all the news and read between the lines so you don't have to. Jill, for those of you watching on YouTube, gradually coming to you from our new podcast space. The curtain is up. We're going to get some bookshelf and some accoutrement behind me, but this is the no frills look for now.
Every day we'll just note like a new piece coming together in the studio. And
hey,
one
last
day it'll
week it was just
perfect.
boxes behind me, and then today it's, a curtain and a microphone is now set up. And so we're getting there slowly but surely on this, the first day of spring today.
That's right. The vernal equinox arrived this morning at 5:01 a.m. Eastern time. It marks the start of the spring season for the Northern Hemisphere. And if you're listening to us from the Southern Hemisphere, it's officially fall.
Yeah, on the equator, the sun will be directly overhead at noon. Equinoxes are the only time when both the North and South poles are lit by sunshine at the same time. So also probably for those of you who believe in various astrology and, other phenomena, hopefully no weird things happen today on today, the equinox. But it's a moment as we make our way gradually around the sun, and we shift angle from the southern hemisphere angling towards the sun now towards the northern hemisphere angling towards the sun.
We might be complicating this. I think the headline is just, it's spring. Yay. Finally, it was a long winter. Things are looking up.
Looking up for us in the northern hemisphere, and then you get to enjoy fall in the southern hemisphere. And as we told you yesterday on the podcast, if you heard the story about Antarctica, you're heading into the coldest 9-month period in Antarctica. You only got a couple good months there, and now you're locked and loaded there for winter in Antarctica, slowly but surely.
And watch your back, because apparently some coworkers are a little crazy.
Yeah, exactly. If you're looking for more details, listen to yesterday's podcast. Jill, in the meantime, I know we have a lot of news to get to.
We do. To the headlines now. Attorney General Pam Bondi says attacks on Tesla dealerships are domestic terrorism, and how some progressives are now distancing themselves from the car brand.
And how some shareholders are selling off the stock. We talk about this whole move against Tesla and some of the challenges that Elon Musk's brand faces as he has taken on this prominent role with Donald Trump.
President Trump says Ukraine-Russia talks are on track after a 1-hour phone call with Ukrainian President Zelenskyy.
Yeah, that follows the 2-hour phone call that Putin got the previous day.
The Trump administration also pausing $175 million in funding to the University of Pennsylvania over its trans athlete policy.
Yeah, the latest pushback the White House is conducting against universities, trying to get them to change various policies and making them feel it where it hurts.
In health news, a new study finds that heat can age you as much as smoking. March Madness is almost here. AI picks every men's NCAA tournament game winner, who it's predicting is going to win it all.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, you only have a few hours left to fill out your brackets. Games start today at noon.
And Moshe is on this day in history.
Jill, a big birthday for one of our favorite cereal brands.
Okay, let's start with that escalating political and business story. People angry with Elon Musk for his support of President Trump and his actions running the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, are taking it out on Tesla, as in actual Tesla vehicles and dealerships. Musk, of course, is also the CEO of the electric vehicle company. Several Tesla vehicles were set on fire Tuesday at a Tesla repair center in Las Vegas. The word resist was spray painted on the building's front doors. The attack follows dozens of acts of vandalism and violence at several Tesla dealerships nationwide. The lighting up of chargers, keying of cars, destruction of windshields. And Attorney General Pam Bondi is calling the recent attacks nothing short of domestic terrorism. President Trump has said similar things. Here is a clip from an interview that Bondi gave on Fox News, where she says that they have charged multiple people with these attacks.
We are coming after you. We believe these are organized. These are not individuals out there throughout the country doing this on their own. They're targeting Tesla owners. They're targeting Tesla dealerships. They're targeting Elon Musk, who is out there trying to save our country, and it will not be tolerated.
Bondi says that they're looking at the funding, trying to figure out if this is all organized. She says that it does not appear that these are isolated individual events. But Moshe, a pretty fascinating situation, given that Teslas are electric vehicles and many Tesla owners consider themselves pretty liberal.
Yeah, it speaks to the shift that you've seen. Elon Musk's personal shift, right? Not so long ago, he was a advocate, a favorite of the left, a proponent of Barack Obama and some Democrats. As he's moved to the right, most of his drivers of Tesla cars, of EVs, have remained liberals. But now, of course, as Elon put in more than $200 million into the Trump campaign, has really gone to the forefront of the Trump White House, literally traveling with President Trump on Air Force One, Marine One. You often see his kid in the White House. Well, you have now seen a shift when it comes to Tesla owners and how they feel about their vehicles, given how prominent Musk's role is in the White House. There are a number of people putting bumper stickers on their Teslas, saying things like, quote, "I bought this before we knew Elon was crazy," or, quote, "I just wanted an electric car. Sorry, guys." So a lot of people trying to effectively apologize for the vehicle that they have, Democrats who own Teslas. By the way, we should note Tesla has benefited greatly from its relationship with previous administrations, including Democratic administrations. They received a $465 million loan during the Obama years. Now, a number of prominent Tesla owners on the left have said they are giving up their cars or selling their cars in protest of Elon Musk. That includes Senator Mark Kelly, the senator from Arizona. We should know there's a whole back and forth there. Musk called him a traitor because Kelly went to go visit Zelenskyy after that White House meeting. Kelly's like, "I'm a veteran and an astronaut. Do not call me a traitor. I am getting rid of your car." Sheryl Crow, the singer, is another person who's gotten rid of her Tesla. At the same time, though, you don't see them defending the violence here that is being committed in the name of protesting Musk. Senator Kelly, again, noting yesterday on social media, peacefully protesting is a First Amendment right, but vandalism is not. Those trashing Tesla dealerships and vehicles should be prosecuted. So that's what you see from Kelly there, despite the fact that he has issues with Musk. He's like, you guys are going too far with all of this. And we should note that the majority of owners of Teslas tend to fall on the left end of the spectrum. So if you're destroying someone's Tesla in the name of protesting Musk, you might be taking out a fellow Democrat there, or a fellow liberal there, potentially making them future Republican voters. Now, as far as Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, is concerned, the Department of Justice is really focused in on this. They are looking at 5 years in prison or more for people doing this. They're really trying to put an end to it. And as for that terrorism label, Jill, terrorism has a very specific definition. This is something that often comes up with school shootings, because people are like, well, why isn't it terrorism when there's a school shooting? Well, it depends. Now, ultimately, in this case, you could easily call this terrorism. Why? Terrorism, by definition, is the use of violence or the threat of violence to achieve a political, religious, racial, or ideological goal. So if in this case, you have a very political goal, which is protesting Elon Musk and his role with Trump, you could pretty easily define this as political terrorism here. So for those of you curious, you can check that out. The FBI has a very specific definition on what they call terrorism. It's also why when you see certain acts of violence, the FBI typically is reluctant to immediately call things terrorism because they want to get into the motive of the perpetrator. But in these cases, given what we've seen, given that literally some of the graffiti mentions Musk and Trump, pretty clear here that some of these crimes are committed in the name of politics.
And the Tesla brand has also taken a financial hit. Since Trump took office in January, the company's stock has dropped about 40%. Multiple board members and executives have offloaded more than $100 million in shares since early February. And that is despite President Trump buying a Tesla at the White House.
Yeah, Trump bought that Tesla. He kind of turned the White House driveway into a de facto showroom last week. Now, we should know Tesla stock was down 55% from its high. So now it's down just a 40%, but still pretty significant there. Together, those top four officers of the company have offloaded $100 million in shares since early February. Now, we should note early February was also the top of the market. And so there have been some other factors there. Everyone is effectively down. Tesla more than others, but includes some prominent shareholders and board members of Tesla. That includes James Murdoch, son of Rupert Murdoch. He has exercised stock options in the millions of dollars. Elon Musk's brother, Kimball, also unloaded 75,000 shares of the stock for about $27 million recently. Kimball also sits on the board there. So certainly there are some people within Tesla who are like, hey, Elon, are you going to come back to the business? Or are you going to, how long are you doing this whole Trump thing for? Because we're not sure long-term this is great for us. We really will have to pivot if this is a long-term thing. So certainly one of the big questions that's been asked is how can he continue to manage SpaceX and X/Twitter and Tesla and everything else that he's up to, in addition to all of the Doge stuff. So certainly things potentially coming to a head there for Elon Musk in the coming weeks and months.
And now to the latest in President Trump's diplomatic efforts to end the war in Ukraine. His latest phone call was with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelenskyy on Wednesday. It lasted an hour. President Trump called it a, quote, very good call. And President Zelenskyy said that it was, quote, indeed not bad. Moshe, I love that.
Indeed. Yes.
And it came a day after President Trump had a 2-hour phone call with Russian President Vladimir Putin, in which Putin agreed to temporarily halt attacks on energy infrastructure targets, but he did stop short of agreeing to the broader 30-day ceasefire that Ukraine had agreed to. And that was really President Trump's goals. He's trying to stop the fighting entirely about 3 years after Russia invaded the country. But Trump says they are very much on track to get Kyiv and Moscow on the same page. One Ukrainian official says the whole tone of the conversation was that we have to move on. But Moshe, despite all the talk, the fighting continues.
Yes, sadly, this war, now more than 3 years in, continues. Ukraine and Russia exchanging aerial assaults overnight on Tuesday into Wednesday, just hours after the Kremlin had agreed to temporary halts on energy infrastructure targets. On Wednesday, Zelenskyy accused Putin of breaking his pledge already, saying that Russia attacked Ukraine with 150 drones, including strikes on what else? Energy targets, energy facilities inside Ukraine, along with a hospital, an electricity system that powers railways. The Kremlin also condemned overnight an attack on an oil facility in Russia, saying that it shows that Ukraine is doing the same thing and shows a lack of will to reach a deal here. Special envoy Steve Witkoff, we mention him a lot because Trump has given him double duty. He's handling both the Gaza-Israel negotiations, and Witkoff is also handling Russia-Ukraine negotiations. He told Bloomberg News that Russia's latest attacks on energy infrastructure were likely planned before Putin gave the order to stand down. And so Witkoff is saying, I think that Putin is still operating in good faith here. Jill, we're now more than 36 hours removed here from that first Putin phone call and now the Zelenskyy phone call. So we'll see if they can actually try to abide by this halt, at least to attacks on energy infrastructure. Again, as I was saying yesterday, is the beginning of trust building between the sides. U.S. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz says the U.S. and Russian technical teams will be meeting in Saudi Arabia in the coming days. Saudi Arabia has served as the home here for a lot of these negotiations. And so we'll see if they can actually start to tone things down more than just statements from Putin, Trump, and Zelenskyy so far.
Time for the speed read from NBC News. The latest on the Trump administration efforts to force major changes on some of the most prominent college campuses, with the announcement Wednesday that the Trump administration is pausing $175 million in federal funding to the University of Pennsylvania over its transgender athlete policies. In a post on X, the White House says that UPenn's policies are, quote, forcing women to compete with men in sports. The post ended with the Trump tagline, promises made, promises kept. Penn made national headlines in 2022 when a transgender student athlete, Leah Thomas, competed on the women's swim team and then went on to become the first transgender woman to win an NCAA swimming championship. Thomas has since graduated, but a senior White House official telling NBC News that the Trump administration says Penn continues to allow transgender athletes in women's events. A spokesperson for UPenn said it's aware of media reports about the suspension, but that the university has not received any official notification or details. That spokesperson saying that Penn has always followed NCAA and Ivy League policies regarding student participation on athletic teams.
We should note that 3 former Penn swimmers filed a lawsuit last month that accuses Penn, Harvard, the Ivy League, and the entire NCAA of violating Title IX, the civil rights law that prevents sex-based discrimination in education programs and activities that receive federal funding. They argue that effectively by allowing trans women into women's sports, that's discriminatory towards women in the sport. Last month, President Trump signed an executive order prohibiting transgender women and girls from competing in female sports. The order refers to trans women as men, as biological men. It said that having them in women's sports is, quote, demeaning, unfair, and dangerous to women and girls, and denies women and girls the equal opportunity to participate and excel in competitive sports. And so this is just the latest in Trump administration trying to effectively force universities to abide by various executive orders here by using the significant funding that the government gives universities, oftentimes for research. In the case of Penn, they receive money from the Department of Defense and other federal departments to do research on these campuses. You know, there's national security research, there's medical research that happens with this funding. Oftentimes you guys are asked, like, why does all this money go to these universities? Well, for the most part, folks, when it comes to major research in this country, a lot of it is done at universities with special labs and experts and scientists. And oftentimes those universities are not willing or thinking about doing that research that's important for national security or national matters unless they receive that funding from the government. So in this case, that funding pays for a lot on these campuses. And so in order to get Harvard and some of these schools to do things that the government wants, or in this case, Penn, the Trump administration is saying, hey, we're cutting off the money until you change some stuff. And you're certainly seeing that at Columbia University. It appears, Jill, there's a Wall Street Journal story out yesterday that says that they're basically going to abide by the entire list of demands the Trump administration has made in regards to anti-Semitism and other matters in order to get their $400 million back in federal funding. So with Penn, we'll continue to watch the details here. Penn initially said yesterday they didn't get a direct letter. They saw this in the media. So we'll see what happens next. Sticking with education-related matters, we should note that we learned late last night that at some point today, President Trump is expected to finally sign an executive order calling for the closure of the Federal Department of Education. This is something he's been talking about for a while. We saw reports of this in recent weeks. It appears the administration had pulled it back as they hadn't given enough people a heads up, including on Capitol Hill, as to their plans. But now it appears today is the day they will move ahead with an event at the White House to sign the order with the president directing Secretary of Education Linda McMahon to, quote, take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the states. Now, as we've told you for a while here, formally closing a department requires an act of Congress. Now, while it appears he would have the votes, potentially have the votes in the House to get this through, but over in the Senate, they would require a filibuster-proof majority, which means he would need a few Democrats to vote along with him. That is extremely unlikely, if not impossible. But without congressional approval to completely close the department, he can still do a lot to effectively cut staff and cut programming there at the Department of Education. We've seen what they've done over at the U.S. Agency for International Development, USAID, effectively making it impossible for existing employees to carry out a lot of their work. For those of you asking, what's the issue here? Why close the Department of Education? This has been an issue for a number of Republicans going back to Ronald Reagan. A reminder, Department of Education, one of our newest departments. It was created by Jimmy Carter in 1979. It came out of previous departments. He felt they needed a standalone department for things related to education. And Republicans have talked about closing it in the 80s. In the 90s, in the 2000s. But now it appears Trump is actually going to move ahead with his attempt to cut it. Linda McMahon already announced last week her plan to reduce the size of the department by half. It's one of the smaller departments, but she was planning on cutting nearly 2,000 workers there from the Department of Education. It is already the smallest cabinet-level department, but it still has about $268 billion in annual budget, about 4% overall of the U.S. budget. For the most part, our education system is run by local and state authorities when it comes to funding, curriculum. Most of the things that happen at your local schools are happening due to rules, regulations, and decisions at a local and state level. Now, what the federal department does is it handles civil rights enforcement. It handles distributing money for schools with high rates of poor students, assisting children with disabilities. It also runs significantly the student loan program. And so ultimately, there's a lot of you impacted by it and asking questions about it. And it appears that things like the student loan program would move over to other departments. There's been talk within the White House about moving it over to the Department of the Treasury, and then other programs potentially moving to the Department of Labor and various other departments within the administration. But there will be major fights on this. There will be lawsuits on this. Look for Democratic responses throughout the day on this, as well as some Republicans who might say maybe the education department in need of reform, but we shouldn't be completely taking apart the department. So we shall see what happens. We've seen some of the pushback in the courts, judges freezing various moves by the administration on various departments, saying they're not following proper procedure, not going through Congress. So expect a legal fight on this, but it appears Trump is moving ahead with it. And so we'll follow those developments over on the Instagram page throughout the day.
From the New York Times, a New York federal judge on Wednesday transferred the case of a Columbia University graduate detained by the Trump administration this month to New Jersey, where his lawyers will continue their efforts to seek his release. Mahmoud Khalil's legal team had been trying to move his case out of Louisiana since he was transferred there. Had his case been heard there, a conservative appeals court in New Orleans could have set a broad precedent for deportations. Khalil is a leader of the pro-Palestinian protests on Columbia's campus. After his arrest, he was quickly transferred from Manhattan to New Jersey and then to Louisiana. The Trump administration has tried to deport him, saying that he supports terrorism and is in violation of his green card, although he is a legal permanent resident and he has still not been charged with a crime.
Yeah, the government notes that he led this apartheid, anti-Israel divestment group that has said a number of things, praising Sinwar, the brainchild of the October 7th attacks, praising Hamas. And so Marco Rubio and others in the administration have said, if he told us when he applied for a visa and a green card that he was going to engage in protests where he was saying positive things about groups like Hamas, we would have never given him that. So he's broken that. The argument goes from the administration. Now, his attorneys say this is a First Amendment case. This is a free speech case, and he has freedom of speech here. Now, notably, as we talk about which court's going to have jurisdiction, the belief is, and the government has not commented on this, that when he was arrested in New York, taken to a facility in New Jersey, and then transferred to Louisiana, that it was effectively court shopping by the administration. By the way, we should note both sides do this. You try to find court systems that you think are more amenable to your arguments. The circuit down there that includes Louisiana tends to be more conservative in their judges, and so potentially more amenable to Trump administration arguments in regards to deportation, green cards, etc. Now, the Khalil legal team is trying to get him released from prison, says he's not a threat. They want the case heard in the Northeast. Now it appears the judge has shifted it to New Jersey, where he was, again, initially arrested when the case was filed here. And so we'll watch these details. In the meantime, he remains in custody there in Louisiana. His wife, 8 months pregnant, unable to travel to visit him. So that's one of the arguments they've been making in court. And we should note, we heard for the first time from Khalil in letter form. He released a letter from jail describing himself as a political prisoner late Tuesday night. He detailed the conditions, and then he continued to decry, his larger political agenda, Israel's new offensive in the Gaza Strip. He described his arrest in the letter. He recalled how Department of Homeland Security agents refused to provide a warrant to him, saying that he was accosted. He and his wife were accosted as we returned from dinner. There's been some video released. It appears the wife took some video that's been released on social media showing the arrest, showing the agents not willing to give any information about themselves, where he was going in that video. So we're going to continue to monitor that case.
To Iran, from Axios, President Trump's letter to Ayatollah Khamenei, the supreme leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran, gave the regime 2 months to negotiate a new nuclear deal. If Iran rejects Trump's outreach and does not negotiate, the chances of U.S. or Israeli military action against Iran's nuclear facilities would dramatically increase. Iran's nuclear program has advanced over the past 4 years, and the country is closer than ever to being able to produce a nuclear weapon.
Trump revealed initially 2 weeks ago that he had sent this letter to the supreme leader in Iran. What we've described as the carrots and sticks strategy here, sticks being, we're going to force you through will, the bombing of the Houthis, carrots, these negotiations. Trump is a deal maker. So, even with Iran, he's looking at some potentially big deal here. Remember the first term, he tried to strike big deals with Kim Jong-un in North Korea. The letter was officially delivered to Iran's foreign minister several days ago. It's not clear when the clock exactly is running on the 2-month deadline here. They haven't given a hard date based on the reporting that we've seen. But it is interesting because it does come at a time where we've seen major progress in Iran's nuclear program these last 4 years. It says it's closer than ever to producing a nuclear weapon. If it can enrich its stockpile of uranium to a certain level, it will be enough, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, to produce 6 nuclear bombs. Now, this is based on third-party data. The Iranians continue to deny that they're pursuing nuclear weapons, but they've always been skeptical. Everyone's always been skeptical as to why a country with so much natural gas and oil would need nuclear power. The Iranians are like, we need civilian nuclear power. And the rest of the world's like, no, you don't actually. You're clearly pursuing a nuclear program, in pursuit of regime survival. Keep in mind, they looked at Saddam being taken down in Iraq without nuclear weapons as basically, well, he didn't have an insurance policy in nuclear weapons. Same thing with Muammar Gaddafi in Libya, who actually, in deals with the West, gave up his nuclear weapons or his pursuit of nuclear weapons. He was taken out without nuclear weapons. Who hasn't? Kim Jong-un in North Korea with his own nuclear stockpile. So the Iranians look at that, and the supreme leader and the Ayatollahs and all the folks around that regime see that as an insurance policy, that regimes with nuclear weapons, it's more difficult for countries, their adversaries, to take them out. And so that's why people have always been nervous about the Iranians wanting to actually get them. And also the fact that they call for things like death to Israel, death to America in the hands of a group of people, the Iranian government is concerned that they might actually use them for their foreign policy purposes. So that's always been the fear there when it comes to Iranian nuclear weapons. Trump trying to strike a deal here before he has to follow through with threats that he's made, which is he will never allow Iran to get a nuclear weapon and will pursue any option to prevent that.
Some health news from NPR. Heat can age you as much as smoking. A new study published in Science Advances shows that prolonged heat exposure can modify how people's genes behave, speeding up aging at the molecular level and potentially impacting people's long-term health. The study's head researcher says that the impact is similar to the effect of smoking and drinking. The study looked at people over 56 years old living across the country with very different heat experiences. People from extremely hot parts of the country, like Phoenix, where the heat index, which is a combination of temperature and humidity, topped 90 degrees for more than half of the year. They looked biologically about 14 months older epigenetically than similar people living in cooler places like Seattle, where fewer than 10 days of each year exceed that threshold. Research links premature aging with an earlier onset of health issues like dementia, diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. And Moshe, hopefully you can explain to us what epigenetic aging is.
I will try my best here, Jill. The researchers tracked the biological age of people in their study by looking for subtle changes in their DNA based on the amount of exposure they had to heat. Effectively, you have your age. Your epigenetic age is like the actual age of your genes, like your biological age. So you could be 40 or 50 or 60, but your body might tell a different story. You might be younger than your actual age, or you might be older based on the impact of a whole variety of things. And by the way, it's not just heat. If you don't eat well, that could age you. If you don't get enough exercise, that could age you. We certainly know people who are a young 60 or an old 60, a young 80 or an old 80. We certainly see it in our politics sometimes as well. Emotional stress, physical stress, environmental harms like pollution can also impact the age here. And so the outcomes, at least in terms of this study, were clear. People who experienced more heat over the long term aged faster biologically than those in cooler places. Though sort of ironic here, Jill, especially here in the States, where do people retire to? Warm weather locations. But nonetheless, there are a lot of other factors here. Jill, I was just Googling because I was curious, like globally life expectancy, longest lifespans, Hong Kong, Japan, which we should know, Japan actually can have some pretty warm summers, followed by South Korea. So there you could say regionally, there's clearly something happening genetically, diet-wise, Hong Kong, Japan, South Korea. Then French Polynesia, not a bad place to live, but a pretty warm place to live. Switzerland, Australia, and then you get into Italy, Spain, Malta, as you go into like 8, 9, 10 there in terms of world's longest lifespan. So certainly there I look at that and I'm like, all right, some of those places have pretty warm-ish, Spain and Italy in particular, warmer summers, and they have a slightly longer lifespan than Norway, which is colder. So we'll give this study a few points of credit, but clearly there's other things at play here, I would argue. Diet, exercise, overall culture, happiness of society, medical care.
I respect the skepticism, Moshe.
I think it's super important to always look at these medical studies with headlines by, let's look at other data points, right? Before you call your parents or grandparents, you're like, you need to leave Florida immediately. Move. You're going to die sooner in the warm weather.
It is surprising because in warmer weather, people tend to be outside more and they're a little bit healthier. But I guess when it's too warm, you're kind of forced inside.
There's clearly, this is a factor of many.
And finally, from USA Today Sports used the Microsoft Copilot AI chatbot to predict the result of every men's game in this year's NCAA tournament bracket. The results looked a lot like a typical bracket filled out in NCAA tournament pools around the country. And it's becoming an increasingly popular tool as well for college basketball fans to use during March Madness. Now, this particular AI chatbot had one major upset. AI picked 7-seed Kansas to win it all.
I know some friends, buddy of mine, Dustin in Chicago, Rock Chalk Jayhawk. He doesn't need AI to pick Kansas to go all the way, but backed up here by at least one artificial intelligence model here. The stars on that team, Hunter Dickinson, DeJuan Harris, the AI model believes that they will help lead Kansas to beat the 3-seed Texas Tech, the 1-seed Florida, and basically all along the way to win everything. But we should note, they are a 7-seed. Sometimes the 7s go down to the 10s in the first round. So we'll see if Kansas can live up to the expectations of the AI model here, at least this AI model. Jill, you told me you use this model to fill out your bracket for the Mo News Premium Bracket Challenge.
Yes, admittedly, I haven't really been following basketball closely this year. So I figure this is better than just my random guesses, right? I followed it, but not in every single category. So I went to Michigan, so I picked the Wolverines to go further, not win it all, but to go a little bit further than the AI chatbot did.
Such a homer. Yeah.
and I picked I changed a couple of other things as well, but I figured, why not? Let's see. So if I actually wind up doing well in this pool,
you can thank AI.
Yes.
Yeah. You can thank Microsoft AI. We should note that this AI model also has Houston as the only number 1 seed to make it to the Final Four. So that's interesting too. Reminder, Mo News Premium members, fill out your brackets. If you're not a Mo News Premium member, become one immediately. We are offering a $100 Amazon gift card to the winner, a free year of Mo News Premium. I think if you finish in 3rd place, you get some free merch, Mo News merch. And so incentive there for those of you. I think last time I checked, Jill, our men's bracket had more than 500 brackets in it. The women's bracket had about 300 brackets in it. So we have a men's challenge and a women's challenge for the tournament. And good luck to all of you who run businesses. As of about noon today, many of your employees will not be doing much work today and tomorrow, though they might claim to. They'll definitely be on Zoom, audio only.
Right. If you see them just jump up and start cheering, you know why.
The serious one's probably already called in sick today. They're definitely under the weather. All right, now time for On This Day in History. We begin in 1854 in the town of Ripon, Wisconsin. Any of you might know what Ripon, Wisconsin is known for. The place where the Republican Party was founded. It was the merger of 2 parties at the time aimed at combating the expansion of slavery into the American territories of the Midwest and the West. Former members of the Whig Party was pretty big there for a couple decades, established this new party to oppose the spread of slavery. They also felt that they opposed the tyranny of Andrew Jackson and the escalating crisis over slavery. Of course, the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, just a few years later there. On this day in 1995, one of the deadliest chemical terror attacks in history, the sarin gas attack in the Tokyo subway system, took place on this day in 1995, killing 12, injuring 5,000. Sarin gas used by this cult called Om Shinrikyo means supreme truth. They had thousands of followers all over Japan who believed their doomsday prophecies, and it led this cult to basically engage in this really terrible, tragic attack on the Tokyo subway system on this day. All right, now to lighter subjects, some breakfast cereal history for you on this day. Turning 61 years old today, Lucky Charms. General Mills introduces Lucky Charms March 20th, 1964.
And the cereal is still going strong.
They're magically delicious. Isn't that? That's the tagline.
Yes.
That's it.
Correct.
My mother growing up would let us very rarely get Lucky Charms, but she said it was a dessert that we would take with our lunch. You can't, that was just pure sugar for breakfast.
She's not wrong.
No, she's not wrong. That's pure sugar, even if you put it in a bowl of milk.
I like it as a topping for frozen yogurt, which is also the same type of thing. It's like a crunchy, sweet thing. I don't know if I want it for my breakfast.
There's a bunch of breakfast cereals. I mean, even my favorite growing up, Golden Grams, Corn Pops, like it's all pure sugar and is effectively a dessert. On to music history. On this day in 1982, I Love Rock and Roll by Joan Jett reached number 1 on the Billboard charts. And Jill, turning 35 years old today, Vogue. Vogue, Vogue, Vogue.
The song.
Yes, not the magazine. Thank you for the clarification. I was trying to, do my terrible impression of the Madonna
No,
song.
I got it.
You're like, that's a weird way to cite the magazine. Why do you keep repeating Vogue?
And then I'm like, it's the music. Okay, Madonna.
Let's go.
All right, everybody. Thank you for listening to the Mo News podcast. If you like what you hear, please share this with your friends. It really does help us grow. Follow us and subscribe so you don't miss an episode, and review us in the App Store.
Come on, just listen. Come on, just Vogue to the podcast. No, that doesn't work. Anyway, thanks for listening to the podcast. Everyone, happy first day of spring, and happy Friday Eve. We'll see you back here for actual Friday.
And fill out your brackets.
You got a couple hours to go if you're still listening, and it's the AM hours.
Thanks for listening to the Mo News podcast. Have a fantastic day. I hope you enjoyed.